Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. When you think of the British monarchy, there's one name that probably pops into your head almost immediately: Queen Victoria. But beyond the stern, black-clad image we often see in portraits, who was the woman who defined an entire era? She wasn't just a queen, she was an empress, a wife, a mother, and a figure so influential that her name became synonymous with a century of change. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the real Queen Victoria, from her lonely childhood to her epic love story and her unprecedented reign that reshaped Britain and the world. Victoria's story begins not with a guaranteed path to the throne, but with a series of tragic events. Born in 1819, she was the daughter of Prince Edward, the fourth son of King George III. At the time, she was only fifth in line to the throne. However, a succession crisis was brewing. The king's sons had failed to produce a legitimate heir who survived. Within a year of her birth, both her father and her grandfather passed away, suddenly catapulting the young Victoria much closer to the crown. Her childhood, however, was far from a fairy tale. Her mother, the Duchess of Kent, and her ambitious adviser, Sir John Conroy, devised a strict set of rules they called the Kensington system. Imagine not being allowed to walk down the stairs without holding someone's hand, never spending a moment alone, and having every single action monitored and recorded in a journal. This wasn't for her protection. It was a cruel attempt to make her completely dependent on them, so they could rule through her as regent. But they underestimated Victoria. This oppressive upbringing forged in her a will of iron and a desperate longing for independence. That independence came on June 20th, 1837. At the tender age of 18, Victoria was awakened to be told that her uncle, King William IV, had died. She was now queen. Her very first act was to demand an hour alone, something she had been denied her entire life. She then had her bed moved out of her mother's room. A simple but powerful declaration of her newfound freedom. She immediately dismissed John Conroy from her court, showing the world that she, and she alone, would be the one to rule. As a young queen, she was initially guided by her first Prime Minister, Lord Melbourne, who became a father figure to her. But the most significant relationship of her life was just round the corner. In 1839, her first cousin, Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, visited her in England. For Victoria, it was love at first sight. She described him in her diary as excessively handsome, with beautiful blue eyes. As the reigning monarch, protocol dictated that she had to be the one to propose. And so, just 5 days after his arrival, she summoned him and asked for his hand in marriage. Their union was more than just a royal match. It was a true partnership of love and intellect. Albert wasn't content to be just the Queen's husband. He became her most trusted advisor, her private secretary, and the driving force behind many of the era's greatest achievements. He championed social causes, advocated for the abolition of slavery, and masterminded the Great Exhibition of 1851. This spectacular event, housed in the magnificent Crystal Palace in Hyde Park, showcased innovations in science and industry from around the world and became a symbol of Victorian progress and British power together. Victoria and Albert created the image of the ideal royal family. They had 9 children, and unlike previous monarchs, they were often pictured as a happy, close-knit family unit. They popularized many traditions we still associate with Christmas today, like the Christmas tree, which Albert brought over from his native Germany. Their domestic bliss became a model for the middle-class families of the nation. But this idyllic chapter came to a devastating end in 1861. Prince Albert died suddenly from typhoid fever at the age of just 42. Victoria was utterly shattered. She wrote, "The joy of my life is gone. The vibrant, young queen retreated from public life, plunging into a deep state of mourning from which she would never fully emerge. For the rest of her life, she wore black. She laid out Albert's clothes every evening, and her staff was required to maintain his rooms exactly as he had left them. Her prolonged seclusion earned her the nickname the Widow of Windsor and caused a dip in her popularity, with Republican sentiment beginning to rise, however, with the encouragement of prime ministers like Benjamin Disraeli. Victoria slowly began to re-engage with her duties. Disraeli, in a brilliant political move, had Parliament bestow upon her a new title in 1876, Empress of India. This title cemented her status as a global figurehead, the ruler of a British Empire on which the sun never set. At its peak, the empire covered about a quarter of the Earth's land surface and ruled over a quarter of its population. Victoria's reign, the longest in British history at that point, oversaw incredible transformation. The Industrial Revolution exploded, bringing railways, factories, and new cities, scientific breakthroughs from Darwin's theory of evolution to advancements in medicine, changed humanity's understanding of the world. Society itself was in flux, with a growing middle class and calls for political reform. While she was a constitutional monarch, with limited direct power, her influence was immense. She embodied the values of her time: duty, morality, and propriety, the very essence of the Victorian era. As she aged, the once unpopular widow transformed into the beloved grandmother of Europe. Her 9 children and numerous grandchildren married into royal and noble families across the continent, placing her at the head of a vast dynastic network. By the time of her golden and diamond jubilees in 1887 and 1897, she was a symbol of stability and imperial grandeur, celebrated with enormous public affection. Queen Victoria passed away in January 1901 at the age of 81, with her children and grandchildren, including the future King Edward VII and a grandson, Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany, by her side. Her death marked the true end of the 19th century. She had reigned for nearly 64 years, a record that would stand for over a century. From the controlled girl in Kensington Palace to the empress of a global empire, Queen Victoria's life was one of extraordinary change and profound personal loss and love. She wasn't just a figurehead. She was a woman of immense strength and conviction who left an indelible mark on the world. What do you find most fascinating about Queen Victoria's story? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey into the past, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.